Hi, my name is Michael Steele. I'm a Messianic Jew. It means I'm a Jewish person who believes that Jesus is the Messiah, and I want to tell you my story. I grew up in Anaheim, California. I have one older brother who's 6 years older. Both my parents are Jewish, and I grew up going to temple and as any typical Jewish person would do. My parents were what I would call conservative, so we observed the high holy days and did Passover in our home, of course did Hanukkah, did not celebrate any of the Christian holidays. When I was in the second grade, I was sent to the Hebrew Academy in Lubavitch, where it's an Orthodox private school, and I went to that school from second grade to sixth grade. At the Hebrew Academy, it was split into basically two days. The first half was more traditional school, and the second half was learning Hebrew and studying the Torah. As a child and growing up as a Jewish person, we did Friday night Sabbath and went to temple regularly, and of course on the high holy days. As I got older and got out of sixth grade, I went to a public junior high school near my house and continued to go to temple, but the regularity of it dropped off. At age 13, I studied and through the Chabad Orthodox Judaism and had my bar mitzvah at age 13. Entered high school, and I would say a typical high school student, played sports and always identified myself as a Jew. Of course, growing up being Jewish, you're taught many things, but the one thing that's a constant throughout Judaism is Jesus is not the Messiah for the Jews, because in order for Jesus to be the Messiah, there's got to be peace on earth and a whole bunch of other stuff that I was always told that I never read. Graduated high school, started college at Cal State Long Beach. 2 years into college, I met my current wife, Victoria. We met and married in a very quick manner in less than 2 months, eloped to Las Vegas, and my wife was a Christian believer, non-Jew. When I told my parents, because I eloped, that I had been married, they were upset. First off that I eloped, but secondly they were disappointed that my wife was not Jewish, but they got over it quickly and were accepting, and there was no problem. My wife and I, through my parents, continued to celebrate the Jewish holidays of Passover and Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, and I did that at that time mainly to appease my parents. After I got married, I began going to church and attending church service with my wife, and would listen to the messages. And over the years, I went to church for 7 years and still didn't believe that Jesus was the Messiah. I would always pass it off that, well, he's not for me, or I don't need Jesus. Prior to marrying my wife, I had been told the gospel, or what people professed to be the gospel, and they were always told me, it was always this what I call fire and brimstone, that if you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to go to hell, you're a bad person, you're a sinner. I never felt that I was a bad person, so the gospel or the message never applied to me. I'd always heard, everyone I heard that give their testimony was they had hit rock bottom. I was a good person, had a college degree, had a good job, a family. In 1999, I, through my wife, started meeting with Rob Wertheim with Jews for Jesus. I was open to meeting with him. I had been going to church and figured I had all the answers for Rob, and he started challenging me on some of the misconceptions I had about Yeshua, and he referred me to Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53 in the Old Testament is a prophetic verse that talks about Jesus, and I read that, and of course, having heard about Jesus, knew that Isaiah 53 was talking about that, but I still was convinced that it didn't apply to me. Rob referred me to Luke 16:19, and that's the verse that opened my eyes, and essentially it's a story of Lazarus and the rich man. Lazarus is a poor individual. They both die. essentially the rich man goes to hell and Lazarus is with Abraham in his bosom, and Lazarus is pleading with Abraham to send Lazarus back to his family to tell him about the gospel. And essentially Abraham says, well, your family has the prophets and Moses in the Old Testament. If they don't believe that, they're not going to believe someone coming back from the dead. And for me, that was a moment that it clicked, that it's all about faith. It's just a realization that it's never going to be crystal clear. You know, even if it was, the Bible said, the Old Testament, Jesus is the Messiah, I still wouldn't have believed it. And it was at that moment that my eyes were open and I just had a realization that Jesus was the Messiah. It was at that point I repented, put my faith and trust in Yeshua, confessed my sins and trusted Him. After I became a believer, I continued to go to church, but it had more meaning at that time because it was directly applicable to me. So I was a believer for about 7 years when I told my parents about my belief, they were disappointed but accepting, but they had a very strict don't ask, don't tell policy. They just didn't want to know what I did on my weekends, even though they knew I went to church. In 2007, my parents and 2 of their friends were taking a road trip to North Carolina, and they were suddenly and traumatically killed in an auto accident. At that time, I was living within 10 minutes of my parents. They had grandkids, my kids. We saw them on a weekly basis, if not more often. I had a very close relationship, and that was just a tragedy that was beyond words. I mean, it was the worst experience of my life, but because of my faith in Yeshua, it got me through that time because I was able to trust the Lord that He had a better plan for me. And even though I don't understand it to my knowledge, I know God has a plan for me. And because my life since 2000, when I became a Christian or put my faith in Yeshua, He just allowed me to trust that He knew what was best for me. In 2007, coincidentally, before my parents' death, I had become involved with Jews for Jesus, sending my kids to Camp Gilgal, which is a camp for kids of Messianic believers. And when that tragedy happened, my family within Camp Gilgal surrounded my family and just took care of me and prayed for me and made the tragedy bearable for me. And to this day, Jews for Jesus has allowed me to own my Judaism by being Messianic. And when I say Messianic, that to me, I identify myself as a Messianic Jew. That is who I am. I'm Jewish first and believe in Yeshua as the Messiah. Being involved with Jews for Jesus and the Messianic movement has taught me that it's not one or the other. You're not just a Christian or just a Jewish person. You can be both. And being involved in this ministry has taught me that. So everyone has trials in their life, and by putting your faith in Yeshua, He will give you the tools and the foundation to get through whatever trials and tribulations occur in your life. So whoever's watching this video, I would just challenge you that in your life you will have trials and tribulations, and I would just challenge you to put your faith and trust in Yeshua, because He will give you the necessary tools to get through whatever trial and tribulation you have. And just know that by being a believer in Yeshua does not mean that you're not Jewish or you have to give up your Jewishness. In fact, that makes it all more personal to you, and something I would strive and encourage you to strive to do yourself.
Hi, my name is Crystal Buckhalter, and I work with Jews for Jesus.